So we started looking at settings and events on page 13 in the grab and go, and we're going to take these skills, the making of visualization and comparing and contrasting settings and events in the story, to fill in and apply to two short stories on page 14. So on page 14, we have to draw the setting of our two stories and then fill in the chart for setting, problem, events, and solutions for the dog in shadow and the fox and the crow. So let's start off at the top with the dog and the shadow. Here's the story. It happened that dog had a piece of meat and was carrying it home in his mouth to eat in peace. Now, on his way home, he had to cross a plank lying across a running brook. As he crossed, he looked down and saw his own shadow reflected in the water beneath. Thinking it was another dog with another piece of meat, he made up his mind to have it also. So he made a snap for the shadow in the water, but as he opened his mouth, the piece of meat fell out, dropped into the water, and was never seen more. Beware lest you lose substance by grasping at shadows. So fables, this fable in particular, comes right out at the end and says, here's what you should learn from it right at the end. Beware lest you lose substance by grasping at the shadow. So as a visualization, I drew the setting. I was a very talented drawer with this. As you can see, here is the brook, and there is the plank that the dog was crossing. I would also like you to draw an equally skillful brook and plank that is crossing. So that is the picture in my mind. Dog's walking across this, which allows him to then drop his meat into the water and not find it. If he dropped it in the grass, he'd be able to find it, but in the water, I could see how it would get swept away. So then I'm going to come over and I'm going to start off with some things from the story. So in the setting, it's a plank over a brook. The problem in the story is that the dog wants the meat that the other dog has, the dog that he sees in the brook. So the main events in this story is he sees the other dog with the meat and he snaps for the meat. So the solution, if you want to call it a solution, this isn't a happy ending story, but it ends up that he loses everything instead of having what he had to start with. So now we need to look at the fox and the crow so that we can fill that out before we can fill in both fables. So another Aesop's fable, the fox and the crow. A fox once saw a crow fly off with a piece of cheese in its beak and settle on the branch of a tree. That's for me, as I'm the fox, said Master Renard as he walked up to the foot of the tree. Good day, Mistress Crow, he cried. How well you are looking today. How glossy your feathers, how bright your eye. I feel sure that your voice must surpass that of the other birds, just as your figure does. Let me hear but one song from you that I may greet you as the queen of the birds. The crow lifted up her head and began to caw her best, but the moment she opened her mouth, the piece of cheese fell to the ground, only to be snapped up by Master Fox. That will do, he said. That was all I wanted. In exchange for your cheese, I will give you a piece of advice for the future. Do not trust flatterers. So again, the lesson, the moral to be learned from it is right at the end. So I drew the setting, again, excellent drawing here, which is really just a tree because the crow sits up in the tree, the fox is down at the bottom, but for the setting, I don't need the characters, just where it happened. And it happened at the bottom and top of a tree. So then I'm going to come up to fill in my chart. So the setting was a tree. And the problem is that the fox wants the crow's cheese. The events are the fox compliments the crow's singing so that she will drop the cheese. And the solution is the fox gets the cheese and the crow gets nothing. So then when I'm looking to now compare and contrast what's similar, what's different between the fox and the shadow and the dog and the shadow and the fox and the crow. So in terms of setting, one was a plank over a brook and one was a tree. So they're not the same. However, they are both out in nature. which would be very different than if one was in the city and one was in the nature, or if one was set in the past and the other set in the future. So there's different ways that we can look at how the settings are similar and different. For the problem, the dog wants the meat that the other dog, his reflection in the brook, had, and the fox wants the crow's cheese. So the problems are similar in that we have someone who wants what someone else has. For the events, sees the other dog with the meat, snaps for the meat. And over here we have the fox complimenting the crow and singing, so she will drop it. And in both of them, for the events, both the dog and the crow aren't being smart, aren't thinking through what's going on here. And for solutions, then what's similar? Both the dog and the crow, because they aren't thinking, they lose what they had. These are both simple and short stories, but we could take this same thing and we could compare whole novels. We could compare short stories. We could look at how a poem and a story might be similar and different in their characters and settings and events and what happens.